What's going on, guys? This is BunnyMuffins, and I'm going to be going over what compositions to play and what items to go for in 10.2. So I head on over to bunnymuffins.lol, and then I click on Meta Snapshot, which brings me to this page. And we have all the item carousel priorities here. We have my recommended items based on an item quadrant, based on how strong they are, how weak they are, situational, versatile. We could get into this later. Let's go into the compositions, because I know that's why you're here. But if you need that information, that's all on my site, bunnymuffins.lol/meta. I scouted the top 10 players in North America, Europe, and Korea. And I only looked at accounts that actually played on this patch. A lot of players just kind of sit at rank 1, for example, but I did not include those people in this composition ranking, but I compiled everything that they played, analyzed what was strongest, and how often they showed up. So first we have Inferno Shadow. I believe this is very popular in North America and Europe. Very flexible composition, very difficult to pilot due to how many different directions you can go in. You could go into Shadow, which is what I think is the best version, but that's dependent on hitting Master Yi. If you do get Master Yi, Quicksilver is probably the best item on him, and then you just need any 2 random damage items. Obviously, you want Infinity Edge the most, but anything will do. Kindred's your main carry because she goes into all sorts of directions. You could add Rangers in this. You could go up to 6 Inferno. You could leave it like this with Shadow as well, and if you get Lux, you could go even 6 Shadow. There are just so many different directions this composition can go in, and that's why it's rated this highly, because you could pretty much do anything with it based on your draws, meaning that you'll likely hit level 9 because you're not looking for specific units. And as for the items, you don't really need very specific items to make this work. And that's why I think this is the best composition in the game right now. Moving on to the next one, we have Berserkers, also in S tier. I think Berserkers are very strong. I know Olaf got hit a little bit, but they buffed some of the other champions. And just based on the fact that it's the beginning of the patch, everyone's trying new things. If you just go Berserkers, which is a very easy composition for most players, you're just going to steamroll everyone who's experimenting, everyone who doesn't have every transition perfected for all the other compositions. And that's why I recommend this composition. You could also just go the Locket Zeke's Herald build, just to completely destroy everyone and not let anyone play the late game on this patch yet. Moving on to the A tier, keep in mind, I listed a couple compositions in here, but pretty much any composition with the Lux 2-star is going to be at least A tier. So just keep that in mind. Lux is not in any of my compositions that I list here just because it's so hard to get her apart from in mages, but I'm going to explain that right now. Ocean mages, very similar to the Inferno composition. Highly adaptive. You could go in any direction. So you could go 6 mage. You could take out 2 of the oceans, put in more late game wardens. You could go into Lux, you could do Vhagar carry, you could go into Summoners. There's so many different directions, but that's why it's ranked this highly, because you could get very decent results. While you might not win with mages unless you hit Lux, you could get top 3, top 2 pretty often, just based on how flexible the composition is. Going on to the next one, we have Hyper Roll Lights. So this is very popular in Korea. The next composition is Hyper Rolling Predators. This one's more popular in North America, but in Korea, I'm seeing everyone is going for hyper rolls. Well, not everyone, but a lot of the comps that win generally are hyper rollers, which is surprising because I don't really think of hyper rolling as like a winning composition, but it's something that gets top 4 pretty easily. But I've seen Vayne carry just absolutely win so many lobbies in Korea, and I don't know if it's people not going for it, so it's not really contested, and that's why it's strong, or if this composition is indeed just very good, because, but essentially, the composition's built around having your Vayne, getting a bunch of Rage Blades, getting a Runons. You could add Giant Slayer, it's not that optimal, and Rapid Fire is pretty decent, so she doesn't move forward. And then you have a secondary carry in Aatrox. And let's say you're hyper rolling, and then all of a sudden, when you're at Krugs and you're like midway through your rolls and you're not hitting the Vayne, you could always stop rolling, give up on Vayne, and go the Lucian Light build. Another helpful thing with this composition is that as you're hyper rolling, you'll notice that we have Leona and Karma in there for Lunars, which is very strong synergy with Lights because the fights last so long. So you could pick up 3 different 1-costs during your hyper roll: Leona, Nasus, and Vayne. Obviously, Vayne's the most important, but if you don't hit Vayne, you could always transition into Lucian Senna. Next, we're at hyper roll Predators. Pretty easy composition in my opinion. Most hyper rolling compositions are. But this one, you just need a lot of Luden's Echo. Very popular in Korea, very popular in NA. Just make sure when you go for this comp, you have at least one Luden's after the at stage 2-1 when like you start your first PvP round. The version I think is strongest is one that involves including Warwick and no Skarner, and then you add in Steel with Rek'Sai and Nocturne as well. And obviously you want poisons, and Lunar's very good with Predators as well, just because a shield from Karma just guarantees that your best unit lives for much longer. And since you're hyper rolling anyways, might as well pick up the Leona, similar to how Lights are doing it up here. So expect Leona to be pretty contested despite her nerfs this patch. Next up, we have Ranger Warden. This composition's a little tricky. Again, you could go into many different directions with Rangers. You either go Ashe carry or Twitch carry. So one thing I like to do is stack Ashe with static shivs, and obviously you use Vayne as an item holder for them in the beginning of the game. And this early game to mid game power spike from the static shivs allow you to hit things like Singe, allow you to add in Taric, potentially even a Mumu and Malphite for maybe 4 Wardens later with Warden Spat, or just adding a Nautilus as well. Because you could, instead of using poisons, you could just go 4 Ranger, 4 Warden with all like legendary units. And Static Shiv allows you to get to that point. Alternatively, you could go for Twitch carry, or you could do both Ashe and Twitch. Twitch, his best in slot items are Double Infinity Edge and Last Whisper. So if you ever start the game with like 1 Infinity Edge and another sword, for example, you can consider going some sort of Twitch build. Poisons, I think, is the best version of Rangers, just because Ashe, when she has 2 tier items, she ults right away, and then Singe with his book, he increases the mana of the entire enemy team, so you get to do a lot of damage before the enemy team casts any spells. And by that time, hopefully your Taric has procced his spell as well. So Taric and Singe, just a very strong combination, and this is one of the best compositions to take advantage of that Poison and Taric ultimate synergy. Now we move on to B tier. These are playable. They're not preferred. Maybe they're, but they could be good if they're uncontested. Maybe these compositions just are plain weak, but if you get the pieces, why not go for it? Or they're like pretty item dependent. First one, we have Blade Masters. I think this composition's still playable just because literally no one's going for it right now. So if you get a free Sivir and Azir, might as well just keep going for it, because Master Yi can still carry if you reach that point in the game, and literally no one's going for these units. So even though the composition got nerfed in like 5 different ways this patch, it's still playable. Obviously, it's not A or S tier, so I would not go for this comp or like plan to go for it from the beginning of the game. But if you get all the pieces, why not go for it? It's still playable. You could still place pretty well. Maybe on Sivir, you could even go for like the Hush build instead of the damage build, and maybe rely on Azir carry, or even Master Yi carry. Lastly, we have the husband and wife comp. This is the 6 Lights and Senna, and I know you might be wondering why this is B tier. This composition wins the game all the time, but pretty item dependent. You really need a Guardian Angel on Senna, and it really, really helps if you have a Morello on her as well. You don't get this every game, so I would never consider this ever like a high tier composition, just because it's so dependent on 2 specific items, and then you also need a damage item for Lucian, so that's like 3 very specific items. Luckily on Lucian, the damage items are a little more flexible. You'll notice that I have 3 different items here. Hush is good to complement 1 damage item, but you could either go the Jeweled Gauntlet build, which relies on a lot of spell crit, or you could go like a double Giant Slayer build, which I think is a little easier to get because no one uses bows that much right now, so that's why I think Giant Slayer is easier to get than Jeweled Gauntlet. But whatever works in your game, this composition, if you do hit it, it is very strong. You have a huge chance to win the game because they could just blow everyone out of the water sometimes. I have Taric here just to add in a Warden, but you could pretty much play anyone instead of Taric. You could do... right now we only have 7 people here, so you could pretty much add anything to this composition and it'll work. As long as you have Senna plus 6 Lights, you could just put anything else there. Lastly, we have a new composition that came out, which is the 6 Assassin 4 Desert comp. So I know you guys are very excited to try this, right? But Kha'Zix, he likes Quicksilver, he likes Seraphs, and then Zed, he always needs his very specific items. You also need a spatula item, and that's why I rank this quite low right now. Also, no one in the top 10 is playing it. I checked everyone in NA, Europe, Korea, and unless they played it since the time I made this guide, I did not see any games from them since the patch released. So obviously they don't think it's very strong. They don't want to risk their rating trying to go for this. But I've seen people in like the top 100, top 50 play it. But if no one in the top 10 is playing it, I don't really have as much confidence in this as everything else I listed out here. It's probably better than the Blade Master comp though. But that's about it. One thing to note, Kiana, doesn't really matter what element she is, you want to include her all the time. LeBlanc's better than Diana because she's a range unit, and you could add in synergies that complement Kiana as well. You don't have to go for Desert. You could pretty much just, whatever Kiana is, maybe add some complementary units for whatever element is. Also, you could add in Steel with Nocturne as well, or add in Lux. So there are a lot of options with 6 Assassin, 4 Desert, but it's really untested, and none of the top players are playing it, so that's why it's ranked here. But yeah, that's it for all the compositions. Again, you could check this out at bunnymuffins.lol/meta. I have the carousel priority here, and if you don't know what items are strong, you could look at here where you can see which ones are situational, which ones are pretty universal, and which one's strong, which one's weak, and of course all the compositions. And you're probably here for the compositions. That's it for today. Let me know how you guys found this video by hitting the like or dislike button down below, but also explain why you did that. If this is your first time here and you want to get better at TFT, hit that subscribe button down below and ring the notification bell. That way, whenever I release a new video, you'll know right away and be able to use that information against everyone else who has not watched the video yet. I'll be streaming on twitch.tv/BunnyMuffinsLol at 3 p.m. US Eastern Time on Saturday and Sunday this week. So definitely feel free to check that out. I'm on an unranked to challenger climb right now. Check out the show notes by clicking on the description down below, where you can find bunnymuffins.lol. You could also discuss TFT with other viewers by joining my Discord. We have a very active, growing community there where everyone's helping each other get better. And lastly, if you want to keep up with me, definitely follow me on Twitter and Instagram as well. Thank you so much. I'll see you next time.